Okay, good morning, the people on this side. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to our first talk this year. We gave people time to December and to January, Kukula Raha and suffer through January. But welcome, we are glad you're here with us. For those who usually join our meetings, my co-host is not here. We observe the Sabbath and he's observing it, so he's not going to be here today. So we'll just jump right into the talk, and you can share. For those who are afraid of being seen on Zoom, you can follow on Facebook. I'll share it's ongoing on Facebook Live. So our talk today is communicating with adolescents, and we have a womanel here. I know I've been told, and it's been pointed out to me, and we shall just go as we usually do. So my first question is let me go with the psych team. So Carol or Shalom, whoever feels bold enough to open Kufungua Kituo, who exactly is an adolescent?
I'll let the doctor answer that one.
Oh, okay, now you're throwing the name doctor around, huh? So you can get away with this. Oh my goodness. Now the definition of an adolescent. Okay, so when I think about an adolescent, even without thinking about doctor or whatever, it's just really someone who is transitioning between childhood to adulthood, okay? And that depends on culture, it depends on what is going on in their brain, it depends on the hormonal changes that they are going through. But with a WHO definition of adolescence goes all the way to 25, for example. Okay, so it's someone who is transitioning from childhood to adulthood, and the changes are very much evident based on the cultural settings, based on the cultural expectations. For example, in the olden days, the cultural settings could be you're going to be married by 15 or 16. So that would put you in the face of the adolescent stage. Shalom, please weigh in.
Well, yeah, like you're saying, modern times are changing. And so we are having the adolescent stage basically expanding. It's starting earlier and ending later. So I don't know. I like keeping it at the 13 to 18 just for stability's sake. But when we look at the behavior of an adolescent, and today we are talking about communicating with adolescents, I think we are going to start from as early as 11, 12 years old because of exposure and everything else, and all the way until later years of the early 20s, 21.
Oh, okay. And so for us to have chosen this topic, there must be an issue that we are seeing on the ground. So what is the situation on the ground currently in terms of the adolescent-parent relationship, and why do we really need to learn how to communicate with them? And this, I take it to the coaches, Florence and Florence, unataka jina yote kamili ya ID Florence, ama Flo is fine?
Zote ni sawa.
Okay, so Flo and Syria, this is to you. What's the situation? What are you seeing on the ground, and why do we need to do this communication class?
Thank you for having me here, first and foremost. What I'm seeing in the ground is that parents and teenagers, the gap has expanded so much that it's causing a lot of trouble with them. Parents don't know their teenagers, and teenagers don't know their parents. And they choose to go find information elsewhere and not their parents. And how I believe is that a child's home is the first community. So if they cannot have a ground or a community that is conducive for them to learn who they are, number one, how to relate to themselves before they can learn how to relate to others, that's a big disconnect.
And this is your okay, because you and I are the ones who are not back home. Is this just, are you seeing, are you getting that feedback from people here or from people back home too?
Yeah, I coach globally, so I see this all over.
Okay.
And especially with this age of digital and media, the disconnect has become so wide with the parents because kids have learned that they can get information of what they're looking for on the social media. It could be what they really want or what they need, but most of the time it's what they do not need.
Syria, same question.
I would agree with Flo because it's a struggle. Every parent who reaches out is trying to find out, what do I do? How do I connect with my child? And every child or teenager that I connect with is trying to understand themselves, is trying to deal with pressure. And it's social media pressure. They won't say they're dealing with pressure, but you can see that they are under pressure to fit, they're under pressure to have, they're under pressure to belong. And the first place they need to belong is at home with the parent. So if the disconnect between the parent and the child is so wide, whose responsibility is it to make sure that that gap is shortened, or you know, you have a smaller space between that disconnect? It is us as parents. And so I think we have a great responsibility. We don't talk about it. We don't enough anyway. So some of us will talk about it. Some of us will take deliberate action. And there's lots of things that are adding on to that. But I think the biggest one, and I believe we all agree, is they have access to so much. We did not have access to any information. So they have access to everything. They want to find out everything they see on social media, and children are curious. So they're going to dig and find out. And then if they have no guidance over what is right or wrong, or they have no connection as to who they can talk to, who they can bounce their ideas off, or who can help them understand who they are. Because that's when we want to find out, or begin to find out, who am I? So if we don't support them to do that as parents, then they get lost in the miasma of everything that they have access to.
So Shalom and Carol now, okay, it's clearly that I've divided the two groups. See, miracles happen. When did the rain start beating us? Do you think my mother, our parents, because I'm aging us here, had the same issue with us as teenagers, as the same problem we are having with our teenagers?
Yeah, I think they did. When I look back and when I hold conversations with like my dad, for instance, they had the same issues. I think the main difference was the reach. Our issues were contained in smaller areas, you know, like the estate we grew up in or within the family. Now the issues are actually magnified by the fact that we have this global reach. So if my teenager does something wrong, it's likely to have been publicized. Or if somebody else's teenager does something wrong, it's likely to be so public that I have anxiety as a parent. So like one of the things I'm seeing on the ground is fearful, isolated parents, you know, who are coming from a place of, it's not that they don't have a clue, but there's this fear that, oh gosh, it is so different from when we were young. But none of these parents are understanding that when we were young, we were not parents of teenagers. Because you see, so we can't say this was our experience because we were not parents of teenagers then. We are now parents of teenagers. So there's fear, there's isolation, and there's the huge global exposure. So failure is very public, you know, success is very public, and pressure, of course, is even more public. So we have a lot of pressure to also perform, even as parents. Yeah.
Carol?
Yeah, just to add on that, you know, every generation thinks there's a problem with the next generation. That's just how things are. Every generation sits and looks and says, children of nowadays. And it was from way, way back. You know, I forget the quote. I don't know if anyone can bring it up, but it's the one that we use all the time. They say, children of nowadays, they are disrespectful to elders. They gobble in front of adults. They're, you know, all those things. And that was before Christ. There's this famous quote, and I will look for it. If you can't find it, I'll look for it as someone else is talking, so that I just post it there. So that's the thing. And you'll be surprised. My 21-year-old niece looks at my Gen niece as, oh gosh, kids nowadays. So already, you know, even the Gen Zs themselves have issues with the Alpha generation. They're like, no, these kids are too entitled, you know. So let's just start there. That there is, we will, the moment we accept that every generation looks at the other generation as maybe spoiled or entitled or all that, then we are able to normalize this space. You know, Shalom has talked about isolation. Parents feel very isolated in the spaces and the struggles that they are experiencing with their teenagers, because they actually think this is totally new, this is strange, you know. And the moment we put the mystery and we feed this sort of quote unquote monster, then it becomes harder and harder for us to manage it. But if we're able to just step back and normalize and say, look, every generation will never understand what's up with the generation behind them, then we are able to be like, okay, so there's nothing very wrong with me as a parent. It doesn't mean that I absolutely am clueless and I don't have the tools, but let me roll, so to speak, roll with the punches. Let's see what it is that we can do. Let's get the tools, because if there is a difference between that generation and this generation, then there are tools for this generation and there are tools for the next generation. We just need to figure out how to access those tools, activate them, because we are not going to be extinct anytime soon. So there's got to be solutions out there.
So in terms of the tools and the solutions, so why then should we go the communication route? Why can't we just do something else? Magic, pray, beat people? Why the communication route? And I will go to the other half, Florence and Syria.
Hold on, Posa.
Yes, go ahead.
The quotation that Dr. Caro wanted. It's the children now love luxury. They have bad manners, contempt for authority. They show disrespect for elders, and they love chatter in place of exercise. I hope it's the one, yeah? Children are now tyrants, not the servants of their households. They no longer rise when elders enter the room. They contradict their parents. They chatter before company, gobble up dainties at the table, cross their legs, and tyrannize their teachers.
So
Please,
this,
please say when it is. Yes, the year.
I want to see whether anybody in the chat can actually guess when this was said.
All right.
Okay, without Googling, they might actually Google.
in the 60s.
Yeah.
It's a 60s quote, my
That's what you think. All right. So this quotation was said somewhere between 470 and 399 BC.
No way.
470 and 399 BC. It is credited to Socrates, the philosopher, the Greek philosopher. So we are in good company and have been at this for centuries.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so now I have to rearrange my thoughts. So now that Socrates had people in Socrates' time had the same issue, and my mother in Luanda Dudi had the same issue with me, and I'm having the same issue with my children. Why then should we adopt the communication route and not what we did previously, beat the people, ignore them, and punish them? This is, Florence and Syria.
Okay. I'll go. And before we continue, I want to tell every parent here This is not an attack on you. Whatever information you take here, it's a learning and a feedback. Take it as a feedback for you and what how you can adjust it to suit your family and have compassion on yourself, because you are the best parent for your children, and we're here to give you tools to further that communication with your child. So why communication? Communication is how we exchange information. And through communicating with your teenagers, they can understand they build their beliefs from how you talk to them, because number one, you are the safest person for them. So if they come to you and all they hear is criticism, that is telling them that they're not good enough. And when they start building those limiting beliefs from you, who is supposed to be the trusted person, like I said, home being the first community, you can only imagine how they are going to relate to the world at large. If it's a girl and the dad is telling them that they're not good, or rather communicating that they're not good enough, what kind of spouse are they going to choose? How are they going to relate in the world? And that is the most important thing.
How would I answer that question?
Yes, go ahead.
I would answer that question with children are people. Children are little characters and little personalities, and they are not you. So they are not an extension of yourself. And so how we choose to communicate with our children is really, really important. And I'll give an example. I have a 16-year-old. And before I became a strengths coach, I had labeled my child as, you have this temper, you know? And then I went through this program and it helped me to pause and look at my child as a person. And the moment I did that, I realized we have the same needs. So we have something in common. We both like to communicate. And so if we both like to communicate, then we both need to be listened to. And the moment I stopped talking to my child when he wants to say something and paused and let him talk and say what he needed to say, the temper disappeared. So the label that I had given him completely disappeared to this day. And he was what? He was 6 or 7. So it was always a fight, you know, it's back and forth. I'm telling. But the moment I chose to see, okay, it is my responsibility to be the adult number one and to listen to this child. And that's the only way I'll teach him how to listen to me. So for me, communication doesn't start when the child is a teen, but when the child begins to speak, you have to show them that, you know what, I will listen to the things that you have to say. And so it's so important for you to build a route or a way that you communicate with your kids. It's important that you learn who your kids are. It's important that you know who you are and how you relate to your children. So majority of the time I will coach the parent, and they will go and try 1, 2, 3 things, and they will find, oh my goodness, my child wanted this, or they meant this, because they chose to listen. And it opens a door to your child coming in to have a conversation. That is something my son does every day or every other day. He'll come and tell me stories, and I learn from my child. So something that we also don't do is listen to the wisdom of the children. They're exposed to so much more than we were, and whatever interests them, they want to tell someone. So if they go speak to other kids, then, you know, they're bouncing off ideas, they're pressuring each other in all sorts of ways, but the parent is the safe space. So if your child is able to come and sit with you and talk about their things, then you have room to find out what's going on in their life, because you've made that safe space for them to come and have a story. The first person I want to tell is my mom or my dad, right? Or whoever the guardian is. Then you are really opening up to build a great relationship with your children as teenagers and as adults. So it's really whichever problem you have, whichever challenge you have, I think that the key is communication. So for me, that's why I would say this is the builder of anything that you know, any issue will be resolved through communication, but you have to be deliberate about how you do it from the time your child is young. Back to you.
Let me add something to that and say that sometimes as parents, I think we have walked away from getting attuned or knowing our children because of the conditioning that we have. Because if you remember, if you're a mother, when your child was in the crib, when they cried, you knew they were hungry. When they cried, you were so attuned to them in knowing that cry means they are hungry, that cry means they are wet, that cry means they need some holding. So if only parents can remember that and not bring up children as, or see children as somebody that needs to be fixed, that will enhance the communication if we start from there.
Okay. And I'm bringing back this triangle, and Carol, you know, it's targeted to you because you were there when we when we first discussed this. And it's I think it's in line with what Flo and Syria have just said. So let's go through the strategies of communication. We can use this triangle, and Carol, if you can do a beautiful job of just summarizing what Bruce Perry brought to us through this triangle, and you can do communication strategy number one. I know we have different strategies as coaches and psychologists, but in the end, I think we have the same thoughts. So, you know, English Isha's in my head, right? Go ahead.
Thank you, Kosa. I think, yeah, I really like the Bruce Perry's 3 Perry's, 3 R's. And I think just to make it practical and relatable is to remind ourselves that a lot of the lessons that we learn, first of all, a lot of the lessons we learn with teenagers are in retrospect. You find yourself in an intense moment with your teenager, and if you haven't been through processes, most likely you're going to react, okay, before you respond to it. And so, like Florence was saying, let's use those, let's be here to learn and give ourselves compassion. So when we talk about do not react, do not do this, allow that to be a space of just, okay, what can I do different? So when it comes to the 3 R's, then to make it relatable is think about an intense moment with your child that you have had, with your teenager that you have had, and think about how you reacted to it. Because most of that, our reactive moments are the ones that we draw our lessons most from. So that now the next time we choose to do things differently, we do them during the calm moments. But during the reactive moments, when there is an intense moment, it is very easy for us as parents to just go off on our children. For example, my son, I go pick him from an event, and he tells me, Mom, today was the worst day ever, and I'm never going back to this event again, you know. And this is something that I'm like, this thing, something you must do. He's 15 now. We are looking at college, and we are looking at building portfolio. And I'm like, you can't just quit. Kwani, what happened? And so we go on and on we go off on the child. So that means I'm dysregulated at that point, because I'm feeling triggered, because I'm like, you can't just be a quitter. Now my son is becoming a quitter and all that. So during that intense moment, or during that moment of the moment of conflict, it's important for you as a parent to step back and figure out what is really going on with this child, okay? At that point, he's made a decision. He will never go back to the sports, for the game that he plays, for example, because maybe the coach said something or someone said something that he didn't like. So when it comes to regulate, is to you as a parent, first of all, and all of us here can agree it has to start with the parent. Regulate yourself and ask yourself, what is going on in my head right now? And so what's going on in my mind right now is thoughts of he's going to fail. If he doesn't come back to this game, then I'm raising an entitled child and all that. So being able to regulate myself because I'm already in a fight mode in that space, okay? And I want to attack, and what I want is to get my child to tell me in those 5 minutes to change his mind after I have ranted for a while, and to say, okay, Mom, I've heard you, so I'm coming back tomorrow, okay? So think about regulating yourself in that space, in that moment, and also think about regulating, giving your child a moment to just acknowledge that what it is that they are saying is really direct. It's really coming from also it's a stress response. Okay, it's coming from a place of I'm scared, I'm anxious. How did these people look at me? Whatever it is that happened then. So when you're able to regulate yourself and just to breathe in and out and give the child an opportunity. So for me, the words I would use in that moment, I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. Say more, okay? So in terms of just saying, say more, because that's not what I want to say. I want to be like, no. We're not quitters in this family. But I'm like, oh, okay, say more. Did something happen? And at that point, you're connecting and you're moving very carefully into the, very carefully into the second space of just relating. Where so you relate and connect with your child, at that point, and you're like, okay, what is going on? What happened? And he'll be like, yeah, first of all, a teenager might just shrug and tell you nothing, okay? And take it as it is. Don't try and dig. Sometimes, it'll be like, okay, let's pack. We are not moving until you tell me what happened and all that. No, just say, oh, okay, you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. Just know that, you know what? We can talk whatever time. Whenever you're ready, you can tell me why. Okay. And this is sort of something that actually happened to me the last 2 weeks ago when I picked him from an event and he had applied for a leadership position and he didn't get. And when he went there, he found most of his friends got those positions and he did not get. So he was already feeling like, oh my goodness, how dumb am I? In fact, he said that, I'm so dumb. If so-and-so got it and I didn't, I'm so dumb. There's no point of being there. And I was like, okay. So it sounds like, your friends got something that you didn't get. Like, yeah, and I don't want to go back. I can't be in this club if I'm not a leader. Okay, that's actually what he said. I cannot be in this club if I'm not a leader. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. I had such good lectures in that moment, but I didn't go there. So in relating, you're just connecting, and you're providing space for more conversations. And that just saying more really helped for him to just keep talking more and more. And because what happens is we always shoot for number 3. We always go to reasoning space. And that time, so what we want to do is to first of all connect with the emotional brain, which is regulating and relating. We say connect first before you correct. Our children respond to us better when they feel connected to us. And I'll tell you for sure, by the time we got home, we had not reached a solution, but 2 days later, he just came by himself and told me, you know what, Mom, I'm going to go ahead and do it. But it was something it's not something that I have done, it's something I've practiced. I have reacted so many other times. So for us to be able to get to that place of reason, let's first of all connect with the emotions. Let's acknowledge the emotions to be valid. And let's not try and change our teenagers' minds in the moment because we are feeling triggered, because we are feeling like failures. So just allowing this regulate, relate, and reason to happen during the intense moment also helps us now outside of those moments, in the calm moments, to have conversations with them. And when you have conversations with them, when you are calm as a parent and your teenager is calm, it actually makes a lot more sense because they listen to you and the lessons learned better during the calm moments.
Hallelujah. Sarah should have been here at church. Shalom, do you use the triangle or what are your communication strategies?
I think, I don't know, it was Flo who actually said, just, what is it called? Like, sort of like, let me call it, extended a hug to the parents, right? And said, this is not just about, oh, the parent doing things a certain way. So I think the thing I would add is the parent themselves being able to communicate who they are. I love what Dr. Carol has said, you know, give the child language that will help them communicate with you. But I feel as though even for us as parents, we need to know ourselves enough, accept ourselves enough to actually tell the teenager, this is how I prefer you to communicate to me. So for instance, and I totally understand that sometimes things will be very, very urgent. But because I'm also human, I need to also teach my teenager not to just bump into my room or into my space anytime they want just because they have a crisis, right? Because if I don't teach them that, then they will not learn to respect my boundaries. I know I'm here to support them, to raise them, etc. But there's that balance between them getting everything that they need from me as a parent, and me also teaching them that I have my own needs as a human being, as an adult. So what does this look like practically? I'm one of those, you know, like Dr. Caro says, you know, and I think Syria also mentioned how you used to just come down on your child, on your teenager. Mine are post-teens. My youngest is 21, turning 22 this year. But I was that demon mother, you know, the real African mom and everything else that they call us. And so would come down hard on them. But when I got to the point where I was relearning communication, especially with my teens, I got to a place where I needed to let them know if this is what I'm working on. Like there are many of us who are here who actually get into a place where we want to change our interaction with our teens. I told them this is what I'm working on, but I'm susceptible to an outburst. And these are the things that drive me crazy. So that they also are careful to avoid certain pitfalls. Like if you're going to leave your bedroom looking like a hollow, you know, like something just happened in there, please close the door. I will try my best to give you a chance to clean your room when you want to clean it. But if the door is open every time I'm passing outside it, I'll get triggered. Okay. It doesn't always have to be said that nicely, but it's to note the things. If I have had this kind of day, could you give me at least 15 minutes? I transition. Let me just go wash my face, put my bag down. I promise I'll come and listen to you. I feel as though that also helps teenagers self-regulate, because now they need to pause. They don't need to act out in a tantrum the way a 3 or 5 year old would. So this is communication for teens. Teach them also to wait before they present their crisis by showing them who you are as a parent and the things that actually affect you. I'm trying to imagine if you've come from work and you have been fired. And on the day you've been fired, you also got a fee note for invoice. If this teenager comes and tells you that they have been dumped by their friend group, it will take everything, divine intervention, sire's prayers, to actually get you to the place where you can address that situation in a calm way, right? It's okay to actually tell the teen, I'm not having a good day. A few crazy things have happened. Please give me 15 minutes. I'll get back to you. Then you go chew your pillow, punch whatever you're going to punch, cry, scream, whatever your method is, then come back, because the child still has priority. Come back to them, listen to what they have to say, but also balance your emotional regulation as a parent by having peers. I mentioned earlier about how we are finding lots of parents who are acting from fear and being isolated. Please don't do this parenting journey alone. Florence said there's people available to actually help, to support you. Dr. Carol has a very nice champions, parent champions, TAVI champions program that she's running. I think it has started or maybe not, but reach out to people who are going to work with you so that when you can't vent to your child and you need to be there emotionally for your child to communicate, you are also getting a place where you're communicating your frustrations, where you're letting that happen. Because communication won't happen when both people have baggage or stresses that they're carrying. And I want to say, it is normal in today's life, economy, etc. It is normal for the parent to come home wanting to, quote unquote, send their child back to their maker, right? But self-regulate yourself, get the support that you can, but teach your teen to understand you and how you deal with pressure yourself, even as you learn. Yeah, that's what I'd add.
So,
Can I say something real quick?
But can I add questions before they leave my head?
Okay, sure.
I'm just wondering, the way we are talking here, it's people who have means and ways to, as Waroi said, it's a therapeutic talk. Like me and you are getting this, but how are we communicating this to my people? You know, I always have to mention my villages, my Eshirota people, my village in Eshirota. How are we communicating this to them? And how are we gonna, where do you stop making kababas and kamamas, if you know what I mean? With this all soft parenting, gentle parenting, because this is what we are doing. Yeah, and whatever you are gonna say, because ingepotea kwa kichwa.
Oh, asante. Actually, it ties out to what you were talking about. So if you tell somebody, not everybody knows what self-regulation is. So my term of self-regulation is that when your teenager comes to you or a parent comes to you and they are really, really stressed or they have a high, they're stressed, they're very emotionally triggered. By regulation, what we mean is find that thing that you do that gives you pause, that makes you feel like now you are ready to talk. And that could be, number one, maybe going for a run. Number two, some people like to chew on ice. Number three, some people like to pour cold water on themselves. That is a scientific thing that it's not, for this conversation. But that is what we mean by regulation, that you get to a point that now I am not so hot in my head, I am able to listen to you. That is what we mean by regulation.
Okay. And do you follow the triangle, or do you have a different way of what's your strategy in communication?
My strategy is communication. Is what I call the route to bloom. For example, if your child is triggered, think of a tree. And if I can share, let me see if I can share my diagram. If you look at a tree, you never get to see everything that is underneath the tree. So when a child's behavior triggers you, think of the tree. What you're seeing are the...
Sorry, Florence, have you shared your screen or your...
I'm learning how to, there you go. Do you see that?
Yes.
So when you look at a child's behavior, because number one, communication, children's behavior is more caught than taught. So how we are modeling to your child or how your child is seeing you communicate is how they will communicate. So if you come home, like Shalom had said, you have been fired, you have what's going on now underneath you is that number one, I have no source of income. Number two, I'm a dad, I'm a failure, I'm failing my family. Number two, I'm not good. Number three, I'm not good enough as a dad. So those are the roots of what's really going on. But when you look on the outside, the you yelling, you hitting, that is what you see on the outside. This is the tool that I really use to teach parents and teenagers mostly how to figure out what is really going on.
Very nice.
If I can add to that, Posa, is, and I hear, or I heard Shalom talking about being triggered. And this is so important, because as much as we want to see our children, or we should see our children as people, you are a person also. So I really think that it is important for you as a parent to know yourself. It is so important to to do what I call appreciative inquiry, where you look at, and this is if you're starting now, you look back at when was the time or when is a situation when I've had a good conversation with my child, or when my child has been really open with me and told me lots of stuff. What was happening then? What did I do? What did I say? Or what was going on with them? And try and replicate that, because something went right when you were able to connect with the child. And then thinking about yourself in terms of knowing who you are determines also how you parent. Because I could be, and I'm speaking here from a strength approach, I may not be wired to be very empathetic, but I have kids, and my kids are not me. So you may have a child who is very empathetic and they have needs, and kids have different needs. So some kids will be very organized and you are not, or vice versa. You are very organized and your child is not. So how do you get your child to know the importance, get to understand the times when they can then clean their room and arrange how you're going to get that done, and agree that, you know, this is how we want things to get done. When they were younger, you could tell, and they would do, and now they're teenagers, they want their privacy, they don't want you getting into their room. And sometimes you get into their room and you find things you don't want to find. How do you deal with that? That will trigger you into thinking all sorts of things. But I believe the first thing to do, and if you look at it from different ways, is to pause and think about what you're going to say to your child. It's not easy. No one is perfect. No one gets it right, but it's a function of practicing the pause, practicing listening to your child. And then something popped up in my head about having two parents in the home. And these days, having a situation where you have single parents in the room. The challenges are different. You have two parents. Let me tell you, kids, at least in my observation, when they hear the father's voice, their behavior is very different. I like to call it Sauti ya Simba. It's very different. Kids will misbehave around their moms because they know they can. Because, you know, this is the only place I can misbehave and mom will be mom, right? And as they grow older, the reaction to mom and to dad will be very different. Mom's personality, dad's personality, the child's personality is very different, or their wiring is very different. So the values, the behaviors, the culture is, of course, what you bring or where your child has grown up. But let's not forget that, number one, they're observing you. So you need to be very aware of your own behavior. And I think we all know kids really listen. They could tell you something that you said that you thought they were not listening to, but they picked up the habit, they picked up the words that you use, they even know when you're having that bad day. I find many a time I don't want to say to my son exactly what is going on, but he'll tell me, I think you've had a bad day, something is not going right, or, he'll come to find out after I've calmed down, what was going on, Mom, are you okay? But for you to get there, it's a function of you need to be self-aware and you need to get to learn who your child is, even as you build that relationship through communication. Back to you, Posa.
Posa, can I just add something? And thank you.
Yes, let me put something on the screen so that you ruminate, you know what I mean? And it's
Okay.
blame Syria for bringing Sauti ya Simba. That would be her fault. Okay, go ahead.
You asked a very valid question about your village. Please, what's the name of your village again?
There are different names. This one we are going with Eshirota for now.
Eshirota. Okay. Well, I went to school in Bunyore, so I know all the Eshis. So the reality is that those questions will be asked. And what happens is that we tend to put a block by saying, this is different, this is not us. The conversations, because I've interacted with different levels of parents, the conversation around that is, these are things of the West. And the question that you asked is, are we creating kamama and kababa with this soft parenting and this gentle parenting. And we need to constantly address that without putting walls up all the time. And so I still use regulate the 3 outs, but without the terms themselves, okay, without using the actual words. And so you relate to that mama in the village by letting her tell you a story of one of the intense moments she has had with her adolescent. When you start there, when you connect with them at that point and they tell you, they came, whatever it is they say happened with the child. Sometimes it's, they're not doing their homework or they don't do their chores, whatever it is, you still appeal to their sense of how did you react? Okay, and allow them to say the story of how they reacted, how watoto wa siku hizi tunawachapa and all that. And you begin to invite them to think about, what are some of the things that were going on in your mind at that point? And you're still inviting them to begin to explore their thoughts, to explore their emotions, to explore their belief systems around what they feel, around the thoughts that they have about children of nowadays, about the fact that we don't have time. You can't not be doing your homework and I'm spending the whole day out there trying to work. Then you're going to turn out like your uncle, so uncle so-and-so in the village. Those are the thoughts the beliefs that are going on in their mind. And you need to allow them to explore those and begin to see, okay, what is the proof? And then to that point, you're developing their own self-awareness. How can you prove that they will actually end up that way? And you bring in a little bit of the science without calling it science. The way some of the things we think determine how we feel and determine how we react. So I think my whole point here is that these conversations can be had at whatever level, as long as we are opening ourselves up to connect with those people where they are without the quote unquote titles and the technical terms and all that. Because I always tell them at the end of the day, we are all human and we react the same. And therefore we can unlearn the things we have learned.
Okay, so back to Sauti ya Simba. So I don't know if most of you saw this Financial Times. I will try and look for the article. I think it was one of those rare free ones, the way everything you have to subscribe. And it talked about the ideology gap opening between young men and women. And first of all, we need to clap for the Warois and all the men on this forum, because most of these forums that I hold are usually attended to by women. In fact, this forum started as a teen mentorship program. I think, Carol, you attended this when it was a teen mentorship program. And then the women, the mothers, are the ones who suggested for me to open it up to the world and to more mothers out here. So kudos to the men on this forum. But now to the question here. Do we have enough Sauti ya Simba? Why are we seeing the ideological differences between men and women? And we can see this is, I'm sure if they did it in Kenya, it will even be wider. What's happening? And this is, and it's been starting all the way in 2005. What is happening? Are we communicating the same? Do we have lack of Sauti ya Simba in the home? What's happening to our children? What's happening to our teenagers? Anybody can take a stab.
Can I say something?
Oh, Deno is here. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. This is, we were having the same discussion with Saya a few days ago, and the conclusion that we came up with is that, from where I stand, from what I see, from my peers, my age mates who are male, it's evidence, it's obvious that the 21st century husband, father has checked out long time ago. I mean, he's checked out, he's done. And like somebody was saying about, the generations are different. Expectations change. Different generations has its different expectations. But you see, the way that ship sails is the same. It's the same process, the same concepts that a navigator will use to sail a ship that was made in 1820 or 2005. Simple. So why has the father, 21st century father, checked out? That's a question we need to ask ourselves. Where did it start? How did it start? When did all these things start, and how can we bring it back? Because even here in America, they found out that most of these kids who go to jail, Black kids who are in jail, they're there because the father's figure was not there. As a parent, they were not there. And sadly, that's what's starting back at home in Kenya, back in the village. And this is what, and I stand corrected if I'm wrong. Anybody can correct me, but this is what I see. My generation, because I'm in the 4th floor right now. Okay. My generation, when we were growing up, boy child alianza kukatwa miguu after KCPE. Okay. As we were growing up, nobody looked at the boy child when we were young. Moi, the Kanu regime, everything was about the guy child. Everything was about the girl child, which was good. It was okay. We were trying to empower the girl child, but nobody saw that this boy child one day is going to be a father and a husband to that girl child. Nobody saw that. So you get a typical story of this young man, ametoka Kole, graduate. He doesn't even, he's trying to figure himself out, but the girl child is way ahead. And then all of a sudden, they have a baby. This guy doesn't know what to do. He doesn't even know himself. So the guy will go missing. The guy can't handle it. He was not prepared for this. Society was not there. You see, then when the kids start growing, it's only the mother who's around. The mother is communicating. And like the way somebody has said, sauti ya Simba. Iyo sauti ya Simba has its place in a child's life. Na sauti ya mama has its place in a child's life, and a child will need that. This is something that will hit this child later on in life, because we communicate with our kids not only through talking, but how we react, how we handle stuff, how we handle ourselves, how we deal with pressure. Our kids see what we do, and they follow up with that. You get me? For example, when I was young, my dad alikuwa sauti ya Simba, and sometimes my mom would yell at my dad. Those, in marriage people fight, argue with my dad, and my dad will keep quiet and assume my mom, and my dad will smile. He will ignore my mom, and my dad was communicating to me and my siblings, but we didn't see it, because later on, when I'm in 4th floor, when I start arguing with my wife, I keep quiet and I smile. I'm trying to tell my kids, this is how, as a man, you should handle when situations are tough. That's a communication I got from my dad. But if my dad was not in my life, things could have been different. Things could have been different. There's a lady I met, and I'm trying to counsel her son. This boy was brought up by the mother, and I kept on telling the mother, this boy needs a father figure to communicate, to talk to the father. But the lady was telling me that, all this child needed was a mother. The mother will do everything. The kid was good in school, smart, well-mannered. This kid is a cardiologist right now, heart surgeon at Johns Hopkins. Best school in the, this kid got the top of everything. But 3 years ago, the boy was divorced by the wife. And now this kid is 29. The mother told me to talk to the kid because women are using this boy as a bank, because this boy has money, but he doesn't know how to control money. So and the mother is like, can you please talk to my son? And I told the mother, you see, this boy is crying out. He needs a father figure. He needs a father figure to talk to him as a man. That's why these ladies are using it, but he's not seeing it. So as I was telling Pose, this is a good forum that we are having, and I've learned a lot from hearing people talk and all that. But we need to figure out, where are the men, where are the husbands, where are the fathers to these kids? Because the impact normally comes later, doesn't show up right now, but later on, you'll see there's something going on. And somebody is free to correct me or, tell me maybe I'm missing something.
Sylvia, I see your hand. Go ahead. Thank you, Deno.
Oh, it's so nice to hear a man's voice.
Right?
Sauti Simba. I think, and I totally agree with what you said, because it's not even about the harshness of the father. There's something about that tone of voice when a child hears it. It's different from when the child hears the mother's voice. So here's what I did, and in an effort to just be as open as I can be, I got divorced when my child was 1 year old. So I could have chosen to go and live by myself, but I made a deliberate choice to raise my son in a village. And who was the best person for me, who was still able and who I knew would instill the right values in my child, was my dad. So what did I do? I went back home, because there was my dad, and then our last born was only 10 years old at the time. So he would have a sibling to grow up with. And so it's been a deliberate effort to make sure that there's always that male presence. Right now, as a teenager, there are things I can never know about being a teenage boy. So what do? He'll have the conversation with my dad. He'll have the conversation with my two brothers. He will have the conversation with uncles. So it's so important. I can't, and I don't have the science or the psychology behind it, but from an experienced position, it is critical to have the father of the child or a father figure in the child's life. Because I think a few weeks ago, we're having a conversation. So the father showed up and is trying to connect with a teenage child you've been away from. It is not easy. I do not have the science behind what I need to do. Dr. Carol, I'm coming. So it is, you get to a point where I just asked him, what is it? Why are you not yourself around so-and-so? And he's like, when I tried to be myself, which is what he is with me, he said I was disrespectful, right? So every time they are together and they go out, there's a complaint here, a complaint here. So I sat him down and I asked him, and he told me, but where was he when I needed a dad, when I needed to do things, guy things? He wasn't there. It was grandpa, it was uncle, it was so-and-so. So I got what I needed. I don't now need him. So it becomes a struggle when they decide to show up and man up. It becomes a real struggle to even communicate with a child in whose life you've not been present. So I would say, for those in our fourth floor generation, your fathers did something and they were present, and that Sauti Simba did something. So it's important for them to just show up in their child's lives. They may not know what to do. Find help. Figure out how you're going to be part of your child's life. What you'll instill in your child's life, yeah? Because, for example, when my son was younger, and we were in a situation with another lady who had a son whose dad was present in their life, my son would ask me, what did I do that my dad is not present, yet we're in the same situation? So you see, you have to answer questions at their level. So I am all for dads being present. I am all for, sometimes as women, we're like, I'll give him everything. I'm enough. Yes, you may be enough, but you can't be the man. You can't have the sauti ya Simba. So let's be as deliberate as we can be around exposing our kids to father figures, to their fathers, if they are, the people you want to be around with good values, but to that voice that they will respect. Back to you, Posa.
I think Flo's hand was up then. So Flo, then Flo, Shalom, then Waroe.
Okay, I'm going to speak to the fathers in the diaspora and parents in the diaspora. Thank you so much to that gentleman that spoke. My heart goes out to every man in this conversation. One thing we have to remember is that in Kenya, particularly, colonialism took our dads from the house. It built us boarding schools that took our children from the parents, and so many things that happen that are negative. Now, when it comes to this time as a parent, when it comes to a child, it is, even if you have two parents in the home, if a child has one secure attachment with just that one parent, that is enough. Number two, I have friends who are coaches too, who teaches inner child healing, and some that teach you to be the woman that you want to be. Seek those resources out. I'll give an example of a child that was in my program, did very well, but went back home. There was nobody to enhance or to follow through with what the coaching program taught them. The parent had trusted the church, had trusted the school, but did not reach out to the child, right? So what happened, the child was a boy that was groomed by a pastor's kid who saw how naive this child was and ended up being, he was caught with drugs in school because of, hey, can you carry this backpack for me? Just like how at the airport, you don't take somebody's bag, right? So that's what happened. And this child ended up in hot soup. So what I would encourage any single parent, especially if you have a Black boy in America, seek out a trusted policeman. And I say policeman because they know what's going on out in the streets, and have them, trust them enough, or you vet them the way you vet people, right? And have them come alongside you to parent this teenager, because the changes in the world, think of technology. That is how society is changing so fast that we have to keep up and catch up. If you're a dad, there's no shame in seeking help. Go to a coach's class, go to therapy, because the same wounding as African ladies that happened to us where we grew up in Kenya, we did not grow up in a different way, are the same wounding that you as the dad are having. So seek out help. There's no shame in going to coaching, therapy, counseling, just because you're a man. I think for the sake of and the betterment of your relationship with your child, it's okay, and I highly encourage to do that.
Let me think. Because I want to drag Joanne Wangi into this conversation to follow up on what Flo has done. So Waroi na Shalom mtashikilia mkono kidogo. Oh, all hands are up. Come on. Okay, Joanne, you're forever draggable. So I just want you to especially as a follow-up to what Flo has said, and if you could address the trauma as David Nabea is talking about, because some Sauti ya Simbas are very traumatizing. As in, yeah, it gives you PTSD. And just throwing all your inner child bounded kila kitu, the motokanyo, you can tell I worked in Kikuyu land, the motokanyo over there, just bring it here. Okay, yes.
Okay. Thank you. I was actually just hoping to be here and just to listen and learn and not to be dragged into this post. But since you've called me out. This topic is so multi-layered, is what I can say. It's very multi-layered. It's not a one-size-fits-all, and you cannot zero in on the children without looking at what happened to us generationally. It's not just our parents, it's our grandparents and our great-grandparents. There's also what is called emotional inheritance, which is the emotions of our ancestors that were passed on generationally, and how we deal with things, hard things, how we deal with, are we even allowed to feel our emotions? So like Sauti Simba, for example, in my home, my dad's Sauti was one that made everybody scatter. So is it welcome in our space? No, because he was scary. And therefore he traumatized the home. He was amazing outside, but he traumatized the home. So we also have to deconstruct, what does that Sauti Simba mean? Who is that person? And then from a parental perspective, we also have to be very conscious. And I like, Posa, the fact that you bring back our villagers or single parents or whoever it is that is raising a child. We still have to go back to, what are we doing as a community? What are we doing to support parents? What are we voting in, or who are we voting into office that provides support for parents? And it's not just here in the US, it's everywhere. What are you allowing into legislation? I can't even say, Mikey, cool yourself, munihurumie. Legislation for our children, because if we all say punitive measures are the way to change behavior, what are we teaching those children? We don't like to be abused. We don't like to be hit when we make a mistake, but we want to do that to our children. So if it doesn't work for us as adults, why do we want it to work for our children? Why do we want to dehumanize a child and then think that they will become this amazing adult who is not a wife beater, who does not abandon their family, who does not do all the things that are not working for us? So we have to look at it holistically. And like Florence said, it's looking at us as a community and identifying the things that don't work for us as adults and applying them to the children. Because at the end of the day, children are humans before they are objects. And we do not own them. We just bring them into this world. They are... they have the autonomy, God-given autonomy to be themselves. We are not to mold them into mini-me's. We are to give them the autonomy to be who God created them to be, and to provide guardrail, right? I look at children as a car on a road. If it's a one-lane road, they have just that guardrail. They cannot go onto one side or the other. Then when they get older, it's a 2-lane highway, and then it's a 3-lane, it's a 4-lane, it's a 5-lane. So you're just expanding their abilities to do things for themselves, and not controlling them and not dictating, but trying to understand. The other thing I want us to consider holistically is, and I think somebody had said that earlier on, I don't know who it was, the world we grew up in is not the world our children are growing up in. So when we say, when I was growing up, we did, you were not a parent of a teenager when you were growing up, and your world did not look like that, right? You did not have sex offenders trying to reach out to you on Instagram and TikTok and places like that. You did not have other children doing horrific things like drug dealing and whatever. It may have been there, but maybe you didn't have access to that stuff. So think about giving yourself permission as an adult to see what the world looks like from your child's life. And if you're not a parent, from the life of the children around you. Because even as an outsider, you get to see what maybe the parents are not seeing because they are overwhelmed in parenting. So as a community, what are we allowing ourselves to do? And as parents, give yourself permission to hear from people who are not your family, to tell you, this child of yours, when you talk to your child, when I see you talking to your child like this, it is dehumanizing. Feel all your feelings and feel offended when you're told that, but sit with that emotion and learn how to change how you communicate with your children. From when they're little, let's stop telling children, when in mtoto mbaya. Because what are we telling them? That there's nothing good about them. A child doesn't have the discernment to say, to discern that, okay, they have done a bad thing, but they are not bad as a human being. It's the same way we say, all men are dogs. Are all men dogs? No. All women are gold diggers. Are all women gold diggers? Language matters. Language matters in whatever way we are using it. So that's all I would say. Thank you, Posa. Wacha nirudi darasani.
Asante. Thank you. And then all the people, the panelists who come and join other conversations that they're not panelists, I all part of to you, Asante Nisana. And thank you for always being allowing me to drag you into the conversation. Okay, mikono ilikuwa nani tena? Shalom, Waroi, and then Carol. Yes, I think it was that. Aya. Shalom, go ahead.
Okay. Mine was a short comment about the timeline and the life of a young man. When he's a teenager, he may not, and I think this I can pick up from what Syria was talking about, you know, a son finally meeting their father and asking, where were you when I needed you? There's this thing about dad being identity. And in line with what Joanne is talking about, trauma, and I think Florence had also talked about it, because of the trauma that the father may have had, he may not have been able to parent that son as he ought to have. However, here we are with men on the forum, with men doing their best where they can, and probably starting to learn a new way of doing things when they're 40. If they're 40 and their son is about, let's say, 15, that's what, whatever year difference. By the time they're 50, the son will be 25. By the time they're 60, the son will be 35. Is to look at if those two gentlemen continue to exist within the same earth, you know, they're still alive and they're still together, a time can come for reconciliation. So our job, those of us who are with the boys, those of us who are spending time, whether as a parent, an auntie, a coach, a teacher, you know, because I've interacted with so many who are not my sons, but who are being brought up without their dads. And like, I'm a stepmom, so my stepson did not grow up with his father, but my son did. You know, there's dynamics like those. If those gentlemen can continue, and by gentlemen, I'm calling the teenagers, the adolescents, gentlemen, if they can be taught certain character traits that will guide them through life, a time will come when they're 30 and they will look at their 70-year-old father or 60-year-old father and say, you know what, there's hope for reconciliation. So what I'm saying is, much as we're talking about communicating with adolescents, let's also remember that this adolescent will not stay adolescent forever. And as we are communicating with them, it's not just for them to survive adolescence, but for them to thrive in life. We want them to then break this cycle that, what's his name? You call it Nyakeriga. The cycle that he talked about of who parented these fathers when they were kids. The girl was given more prominence than the boy. Now here we are suffering the process. But the same way we suffered something years later, we can also feel the healing years later. Redemption and everything else can actually be felt. The fruits of our labor, the fruits of this healing that we are doing through webinars like this will actually be felt later. And that means that this 15-year-old boy may have a great chance of being a great dad because of having reconciled with his own father, right? And then, so that's what I'd say, that we recognize that the timeline is not going to die just when they're an adolescent. If they stay alive long enough, there's room for reconciliation. And then about trauma. This one, I just have to say that there could be people on this call who like reading. There's a brilliant book called It Didn't Start With You. I'll type it out on the chat anyway. It's called It Didn't Start With You by Mark Wallen. It talks and gives very nice practical examples about how to break this intergenerational and inherited family trauma cycle. So we are saying that who we are has come from our grandparents, great-grandparents, and passed through our parents, right? For those who are Christians, we talk about these things coming generation after generation, up to the third and fourth generation, whether it's a curse or a blessing. These things are inherited. And therefore, the same way the terrible things could be inherited is the same way healing can be passed on to those generations. So what I'm trying to say is, we need to dwell a little less on where are the men and heal the men that we have in our hands right now, whether they're 15 or 50, right? And a time is going to actually come when that question will be irrelevant because this trauma will have been dealt with. We can accept that, yes, it is there. So communication, when you're saying communicating with adolescents, understand that the adolescent will not be an adolescent forever. They're actually going to get to a time when they will be the man that we want to make the difference. They will be the woman that we want to let go of the reins, you know, because they have been forced on her for whatever reason. So a time is coming when the communication, everything we do right for communication right now is actually going to bear fruit. Yeah, thank you. Waroi, over to you.
Well, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. I had a problem with my audio when I started, and I had someone asking who is committed to transforming lives. That was actually me. Thank you very much, the panel, for putting this session together. You can tell we have 48 people who are actually not tired or running away from this because it means a lot to them. Let me say that I'm also very thankful for my fellow friends in Memphis, Tennessee, who woke up early and were able to join, and I can see their names after it was posted by Rachel. So Rachel, thank you very much for inviting the group. We come from the backdrop that we are actually playing catch-up as parents. And I see that there are quite a number of people who live in the United States. And one thing that you would agree with me is that we as parents, we are struggling. We are struggling to raise American children when we ourselves, we are Africans. I'm actually now in Kenya, but I happen to spend a lot of time in the United States. And I see some of the founders of our group, we call ourselves the Villagers, which was formed after we lost a teenager in Memphis, Tennessee to suicide. And this actually has become the story of many communities or Kenyan communities across the United States. Any community that you find that has a significant number of people in the US is dealing with burying the teenagers. So we are actually trying to play catch up here to ask ourselves, where did we go wrong? How can we raise these children? And then we end up putting them in the grave as opposed to them burying us. That has become a very big challenge. And so I see these more as an educative sessions that is going to continue to enlighten the parents, to educate them. And we as villagers now, as a group, what we have come to learn is that in order for us to be effective, we have to start by training the parents. And that's why I asked that question, Dr. Carol, that we came to realize that it is not unless we empower the parents that we are going to empower our young ones. We also come to realize that, and I saw that analogy of the tree and the roots, is that when we are dealing now with communicating with adolescents, somehow we have lost some steps in the formative ages. So what we actually see, these children committing suicide, is actually the tree, the leaves or the branches that we see. But beneath, the causes that has resulted to what we are reacting to has pretty much remained undressed. I must also say that based on today's conversation, and there is a place for fathers as if there are places for mothers. If you look at statistics in the United States alone, you'll find that a lot of young Black men are in jail. And in most of these families, they do not have good male role models, whether it is an uncle, a friend, a man from the church. And if you realize, some of the police departments have actually developed a social network system that they can have police officers to go to pretty much underserved or low-income neighborhoods to start to make connections with these young men. That way, at least you can have them not to go to jail, but to participate productively in the communities. So this is a conversation that is actually ongoing all across the board. I must say that I cannot be more grateful than to be participating in such sessions. And so, Dr. Posa, thank you very much for putting it together. Now, my question to you, especially to Dr. Carroll and to the other panelists who are here, is how can we collectively address these things within the framework of the village? That means if a child does not have a father, can we have a father figure in the village? If the child is coming from broken families, can we have the church become the family to this child? Those are the big questions that we are looking into addressing. And also, before I forget, there is this police officer who was teaching us in a gun safety class. And he said he don't give people tickets. What he does is to stop by the roadside and flash the lights. And he said automatically those people who are speeding, they slow down. Why? Is because now they have seen some authority that they can respect. The role of the father, of course, I was brought up by a very firm dad, where it was actually not even trauma. If you call that trauma, I don't even know what trauma would mean, because I could hear my mom screaming and sometimes spending sleepless nights outside of the house, kicked out. Alcoholism was a very big part of it. And we have all these things going on when I was growing up. However, this did not stop us from now reaching out and being much more helpful to many people out there. So in other words, what I'm saying is that when a man is in the house, you do not necessarily have to be brutal and traumatize children, but there is that voice in the house that fills a void that the lady will not fill. They started to respect the authority from the family. Then when they go to school, they are going to respect their teachers as a source of authority. And when they become adults, they are going to respect the legal systems, the law as the authority. Otherwise, they're going to end up in jail. So that is actually the biggest one of the laws that the man occupies, not necessarily that they have to traumatize children, but them just being there and hearing that I hear it is Sauti Asiba. I didn't even know that, but now I have known what to call it. It's actually very, very helpful in the life of a child. I must also say that as parents, especially those who are in the United States, we have a lot of challenges, because as African parents, there are things that we find very, very hard to accept. And I have seen it in the communities, where your child leaves home and goes to college and goes hormonal therapy because now they are of 18 and they can decide what to do with themselves. And you've been raising a boy only to find that now this has become a girl, and he's already transformed himself. And so the parent now is also traumatized. And then the parent even stopped participating in the community activities. So I do believe that going forward, these kind of sessions are so very much important if we are going to keep our parents sane and if we are going to save the life of the children. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aroy. So one, because of course we want subscribers also, we have a lot of content on our YouTube. All these panelists, Flo is new to us today, but she will be included. On our YouTube channel, we've discussed a lot of stuff, and it's not TikTok length. I always tell people, you need like a whole, use it like a podcast to go through them. I think I will repost the link. So we've tackled so many topics, and it's as I must say, and the panelists will agree, it's been very rich. So just spread the word. Facebook and YouTube. Some of the stuff you're mentioning has been discussed there. Secondly, the month of April, I'm looking for a therapist for myself because we're gonna just be discussing suicide. We lost an 18-year-old to suicide 3 weeks ago here in Minnesota. It was very devastating, and it's a problem. And Flo and I stay-at-home moms, and people give us a weird eye. They're like, "How are you a stay-at-home mom in America?" In the United States, something must take a hit. It has to. It can be your career, it can be your finances, it can be your children, or it can be a marriage. Choose what will take a hit. Something must take a hit for you to survive here. And it's a conversation I've wanted to have for a while, but I haven't gotten like the proper panel to discuss it. For those who know me and the particulars I like, but we are gonna discuss it. We'll just discuss the whole immigration thing and the trauma that accompanies it. But haijajipanga kwa kichwa vizuri, if you know what I mean. And so we go to Carol. You are next. Yes, Carol, then Flo. Thank you, Aroy.
Yes, I think a lot of what I could have said in detail has been said along the way. I still just want to go back to the Sauti ya Simba space. I think it was good for it to be brought up so that we really appreciate, like Joanne is saying, the multi-layered facets of that conversation, because it is triggering. Whereas it can be empowering for some people, it's very triggering for others. And it's important for us to appreciate that. And one of the things, I mean, I have experienced parents who, when I'm working with them as a couple, as parents, it's flipped. It's the mom who is firm and the dad who is very easy. So the good cop, bad cop conversation is flipped. And the dad will tell you, I can't be firm. In fact, usually it's, she wants me to parent like her and I can't, you know? And the conversation that has a lot to do with, he's too easy on the children, and she's just finding that, no, this is just, you know, that's just not working. We are not on the same page. But all these conversations always go back to conversations about their childhood, their upbringing, how their parents showed up, what level of trauma they experienced, to where they're like, I am not going to go down that direction. I'm going to go to the other extreme, where let me just let my kids be and let them let them get away with anything. So it's again important to, that's where we bring back again the healing conversation. We cannot have parenting conversations effectively if we don't have the healing conversations, the inner child conversation, the inner child healing conversations, the healing from trauma conversations. We always have to go back there. And so even as Waroy is asking, how do we come together as communities? We come together as communities by learning, number one, to be self-aware in the context of a community, not one-on-one, okay? Allow me to plug here our Stowy Champions Parenting Program, which is very much self-awareness related kind of program that really focuses on you as a mom, you as a dad, healing as an individual. what Florence said earlier is that actually it does take one stable adult, male adult, female adult. Before even we go to the gender, it takes one stable adult, an adult who's open to the journey of self-awareness, open to healing, open to acknowledging that the same father who had a big sauti ya Simba also instilled in me a level of resilience because of some of the words they used to say or some of the experiences they exposed me to. And one of the things we have a very hard time doing, even in just healing our past, is to be able to acknowledge that from that one person, good came, but also terrible things came. And if we are able to do that, because what we do is that we don't want to go there. You know, we don't want to go the painful space. We are like, see how I am. See how, see how resilient I am. See how successful I am. See all this. Look at all. It's because of my dad, okay? But if we allow ourselves that place, that in any garden, there will be good plants and there will be weeds as well, all right? And just acknowledge the fact that from the same person who raised you, acknowledge, allow yourself the journey of healing from where the brokenness happened, but also appreciate the fact that it's not because of the chapaing that you are strong. Appreciate that the fact that that person was a stable adult in your life, and they may not have been a stable adult throughout, but there is a sense of security they gave you. There is a sense of identity that they gave you. And it's okay to acknowledge that, even as you're pointing out that, look, 1, 2, 3 things did not go well. And I'm taking responsibility now as an adult to go into the journey of healing. And so, yes, there is space for healing as communities, healing through storytelling, healing through conversations, where we are open and whatever is acknowledged is put out there for healing. So let's remember, before we are male or female, if you commit to be that one stable adult, your child will benefit. Your child will have a sense of security. There's a psychologist called Daniel Siegel. I will also share his work in the chat, but he talks about the 4 S's of security. Okay, I mean the 4 S's of security, which the 1 S is secure. For a child to feel secure, they have to experience these 3 other S's. They have to be seen. To be seen, and seen basically is, do you really see me in my inner experiences, not just what I'm saying? Do you really see the uniqueness of who I am? They have to feel safe. Safe is, I can come and tell you anything, okay? I can come and tell you anything and you would accept just as it is. I'm safe. You're a safe space for me. They have to feel soothed. And this is the one that we quite struggle with, okay? Just being able to be that space where the child is feeling soothed by you, by the words you are using, by the acceptance you are giving, by just them feeling, oh, I can say anything and you will tell me the right words. Soothing can also be physical, okay, using the physical touch. For a child to feel secure, they have to experience to be seen, to be safe, and to be soothed. And that happens. Healing, pain and trauma happens in relationships, but healing also happens in relationships. So at Stawi Camp, which is our organization, we're really big on relationships and we're really big on community, working this journey as communities.
I think Flo, you're up.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is in response to Waroy. When it comes to the US, there are 2 things that you touched on, and that's identity crisis. The number 1 identity crisis that our children go through is not even about gender or sexuality. It's about the culture. You come home, you tell your child they're Kenyans, but when they go outside their world, they are seen as a Black male, Black female. That's the number 1 identity. The number 2 identity is you as a parent. How have you identified with your child? Does your failure or success reflect how you feel about yourself as a parent? When they fail, do you identify yourself as a failure parent? When they succeed, hey, look, everybody, my daughter, my son. That's the two identity crises that I see mostly happening with us here. When I coach parents, because I do coach parents too, I tell them to get involved in their children's activities, what they're doing. Get involved, and you can come up with anything. There's this thing that teach about storytelling, parenting, or incorporating storytelling in your parenting. Tell them what struggles you went through, but also tell them the good things about what happened to you as a teenager. What are the good things? There are always two sides to anything. You cannot see a one-sided paper or a one-sided bread. There are two sides. So when we continue telling our children, oh, I had it rough, sometimes it comes, and actually a teenager has told me this, I think my parents are jealous of me because they keep telling me, you have it rough. I used to walk barefooted. So what do you want your child to do? Do you want them to go barefooted from here to Atlanta? That's a problem. Another thing, just last week, I went and participated in, actually I was invited to go to Voices of Georgia's Children. Get involved with those things, because what saddened me, well, it's expected, we live in the South, there was only one Black person in that panel. And that Black person was not even an immigrant. So who is the voice of the immigrant children here, or children of the immigrants? I would encourage every parent to get involved in those things, because what they were talking about were policies of child welfare. Who is talking, or who is speaking for the child of a diaspora? It's very, very important. Get involved with those policies. Go to the town hall meetings. What are they talking about when they're talking about redistricting or because that affects your schools? Get involved in those things. So look into, if you're in Georgia, one of them is Voices of Georgia's Children. Another thing, parents, please do not parent from fear. Do not parent from fear. Our children are whole. They have the resilience. And also, it's not that this generation is entitled. No. We are the first generation to bring up teenagers where the world is changing so fast that we cannot keep up. Another thing I wanted to say is, you talked about, can you trust the churches? I wouldn't. Some of the devastating things have happened in churches. Don't just go because it's a church. You are the church. You are the community for your child. Vet that person like you would, like how you, I don't know, I don't have the perfect example, but do vet. Truly know that person. Ask for references. If you want somebody to come clean up your house, you ask for references. They're not bringing anybody into your house. Your child is who you need to advocate for. Let me give you an example of one activity that I teach parents in my class. Words have power, and we know that. I don't know if anybody has heard about the rice experiment. And I invite everybody to do that. What you do, you take a jar, two jars, you put one cup of rice in each jar and 2 cups of water in each jar. And in one jar, you write love. In the other jar, you write hate. And every morning, this is an activity you can do as a family. You say, the jar that says love, you say lovely words. The jar that says hate, you say hateful words. You will start seeing results. Every morning you say that. Let me share an experiment that we did that shows us what that does. So when you're talking to your children and you're criticizing them, always think of this. This was done in 2017, and this is how it looks right now. Your words have power. Where we lose our teenagers and children is in communication, is criticism, judgment, and not acknowledging their feelings. That breaks communication. And then what ends up happening is that your child is not obeying you out of respect. They're obeying you out of fear. So don't parent from fear, don't instill fear. And that will bring the connection and the communication that you as a parent, you are craving for. That's all I have to say about that.
Well, thank you. And please watch our religious, we have, I think, 2 religious trauma videos, and we have spiritual bypassing. Those were, we delved, dived, okay, into that topic very well. And just think about it, in the US, the biggest insurance payout by churches is for sexual abuse, including my own Adventist church. People just target the Catholic Church, my own Adventist church. The biggest insurance payout is for sexual abuse, and it's by pastors, all the not all of them, the elders and the religious teachers. Yeah, so we can't, in the village that you're choosing, be careful, be wise. And as stay-at-home moms, we see a lot. Make sure if you can, please participate in your PTA. They make so many decisions that affect your children. And every time you go there, you're the only, not person of color, but you're the only Black person there. And the other thing is, please vote. Midterm, leave the November elections. The midterm elections decide who's the school board chair, who make decisions that affect you more than what the president does. The local leaders affect you, and we, like I said, something must take a hit. Please let it not be your children. Yeah. We need to eat. It's 10:40. My goodness. Okay, 10:46. I just want one of you to touch, 2 things. I want one of you to touch on the sensitive topics. You know, Waroe brought the whole transgender communication issue. I just want us to touch on how to communicate with our adolescents these sensitive topics, and then each panelist to just do mambo matatu. Yeah, of course we are Kenyans. Mambo ni matatu, like 3 takeaways. As in what is truly noble, what is truly true, what do you actually believe that should be in your communication with adolescents. So whoever wants to start with the sense, because Florence, you're on my screen, I do not know why, but you're the one smiling over here. Do you want to start us off with communicating about sensitive issues? It could be the LGBTQ, it could be death, it could be divorce, it could be cheating, anything.
Okay, number 1, I would ask the parent, what meaning have you tied to that your child is gay? What meaning have you tied, not even gay, homosexual? What is the meaning that you have tied to that? Does that reflect that you have failed as a parent? Does that bring shame to you? And does that mean that they are no longer your children? That's the number 1 thing I would like you to investigate. Number 2, seek support. You're not the first person to deal with that. Seek support from a counseling to unlock why it bothers you that your child has chosen this path that you have not chosen. Is it because of your religion or whatever? Seek support, and that might include therapy or counseling.
Okay, anyone else wants to take a stab? Syria, because I've seen you gulping water.
I think, I don't know how I would react, but what I can say in terms of communicating with your child, whatever choices they make, number one, we really need to drop judgment and see our children as people. And they are becoming people. And we need to take time to understand who they are, how they're wired. You know, you say every child is different when you have 2, 3 kids, and you know they are different. You reacted different when you are carrying them. They grew up different. One is quiet, one is not. We really need to take time to know our children. And then I like that we have gone back more than once to talk about self-awareness of ourselves. So, and we've said words have an effect on people. How you choose to communicate to your child is so important. And I continuously have this fight with my child's father. It is, if you know your child well, you know what they will react to, you know what they will get along with in terms of be agreeable to. You know, you spend a lot of time with your child. So getting to know them, observing them, spending time, activities is really, really important. Sorry, is really important to be able to open those doors of communication. So I am all for self-awareness. So even when I coach, it is about who are you as a parent? Do you know yourself well enough? Do you know how you're wired? Do you know what triggers you? Do you know where you thrive? And so once you know yourself, then you're able to pause as the adult and take time to know your child. And there's a lot of tools that can be used. There's a lot of help. Don't do this by yourselves. Reach out, as we have said, reach out and find out, how do I do this differently? You never know what will work for you, by the way. So I think for me, the biggest thing that I have learned and that I keep doing is pausing to listen, not judging and just listening to and learning from my child and showing him that, you know what, I didn't know what you know. I've learned something from you. And it encourages him to keep coming back to have conversations with me. And so being deliberate about that is so important, right? And just to encourage all of us, nobody has the right answer or the right magic or the right potion for you. We are all so different, and so are our kids. So it takes time, and it's a journey, and there'll always be something new to learn, something new to experience, a new challenge that you're experiencing together. So let's keep at it. Back to you, Posa.
And talking about keeping at it, I've shared a link on it's called, you know, the way we had Vision 2030. What I think we had a Vision 2030 thing. There's a Healthy People 2030, and one of the tenets of the Healthy People 2030 is they're aiming to have adolescents having a person they can talk to serious things about, and this matters life and death. Communication is life and death, and what they do with their life is life and death. And if the government is in it, whomst are we? Okay. Shalom and Carol, do you have any addition before we go to the Mambo ni Matatu piece? And if you have a question that unaona had kamati hii haijajibu, I'm assuming we're also Swahili. The Ugandan person who used to follow us, I don't see many. Well, I hope you're out there, you're alive and kicking. But yeah, if you have a question that you don't think we've answered, please type it here before tukupite. Shalom.
Oh gosh, Posa. Yeah. Let me just chime in a bit about the sex conversation. I've written a book called Eggs, Hammers, and Chili Peppers, and it sort of like equips parents on building these conversations with their children. So I want to just jump into the topic about sex. And it says something like, conversations about sex start with thoughts about sex. Before you can hold any conversation, you will have had a thought about it. So before, as a parent, you can start thinking, what am I going to talk about my child? Talk about transgenderism, LGBTQ, whatever it is, anything sexuality, start by asking, what are my thoughts about sex? If you think it's dirty, if you think it's something that's going to, you know, that should not be talked about, or whatever church and family brought you up thinking, those things are going to permeate through your conversations. And teenagers are well equipped to see when you're calling a bluff, when you're trying to manipulate them, when you're doing it out of fear, when you're threatening them, all that. That's one of the things. All conversations, not just about sex, but all conversations, including about sex, start with thoughts about sex. So examine that. Then secondly, understand sexuality. Understand how it works from the psychological, emotional, the whole identity thing. Get to understand what is this sexuality thing. Because a lot of the way we come parenting our teenagers, because we had, oh, the devil did it, you come and start casting out demons from them. And that's not what you should be doing. Ask your teen, what do you know? What do you understand? Right? They're coming and they're confused because they're getting the information from the wrong space. Whatever the wrong space may be according to you as the parent. But as long as, and I think we have said this over and over during this conversation, as long as you won't be the trusted source of information, guess what? They are going to find that information somewhere. But you cannot be a trusted form of information or a trusted source of information, sorry, unless you yourself are educating yourself about it. Find out more so that you're speaking knowledgeably. Then if your values, we have said that our values and our children's values are different. If your values and your teens' values are different, if you trust your values enough, stand by them and help them understand that these are your values and this is why you stand by them. Because then you give them the courage to stand by their own values. Speak to them about how you arrived at what you arrived at, so that they can walk their own journey. So it's not about trying to convert them, trying to stop them. They are exposed. I love that we have this global perspective right now. We're not just talking to Kenyan indigenous Kenyans who are in Kenya. We are talking about parents in the diaspora who have a real challenge. Your children are sharing washrooms, you know, with transgender children. It's not as pronounced back here at home, but it is all over the place in the US. So when you're panicking about that, please seek to understand, seek to examine your own thoughts, seek to find the information, and then seek to guide them from where you stand. So that you're not telling them, this is what I've been hearing from parents. In my house, you shall not, right? And do you know what the kids are saying? Okay, fine. I won't do it in your house. I'll do it next door. You know, you're not going to stop by making, having ultimatums. You're actually going to get that place that was on the third R of reasoning. And reasoning comes from where you have to first build a relationship. You will not build a relationship when you're approaching from attack, hate, demonizing, and all that stuff. Actually spend some time, examine yourself, examine your thoughts, try to understand them, then understand sexuality as a whole, and you will, like, you know, like I like what Sarah is saying. We don't know. It's a new world. Nobody is going to give you an answer that actually works perfectly for every single situation. Because whatever your child is facing as a challenge, no other child is facing exactly the same circumstances. So I'd say let's start from a place of seeking first to understand, educating ourselves, seeking whatever resources, and we'll be good. Yeah.
Carol, do you have any addition, or you want to start us with the Mambo Matatu?
I can't add any more to what has been so profoundly answered by the other panelists, because it really just boils down to relationship. And so let's take notes from the ones who have just shared, because for me, I'm also learning there. Now, Mambo Matatu. My Mambo Matatu, let me try and summarize. We always say that there is no manual for parenting, but I always say that relationship cuts across. And if you're looking for that one size fit all tool and strategy for parenting, you will never fail when it comes to relationship. And therefore, let us go there. That means that in developing a healthy relationship, we have to work on ourselves first. Okay, so the self-awareness that has been said over and over again comes in there. Looking at yourself, looking at your thoughts processes, any traumas that need healing, whatever else that needs to be worked on, we start on that, and that really connects us well with our children. Be authentic with our teenagers, be authentic about your fears, your struggles, and figure out how to be authentic about them without pouring and spewing it out of them and scaring them, okay? And so this is where the community comes in. Pass it, first of all, talk to somebody, okay? A peer and someone in your parenting space to diffuse, okay? But be real about, you know what, I'm worried about this, I'm concerned about this. Those are some of the conversation starters that we can use when we are trying to guide and influence our children. And number 2.2b, it's never too late to do these conversations. So many of us could be sitting here and wondering, where do I even start? It looks like I have made so many mistakes and all that. Just remember that it is never too late. And the human brain is very receptive to fresh experiences if you are consistent and if you are intentional. So you haven't lost your window of opportunity if you haven't tried these things, because we always have that gospel of the window of opportunity, you know, and that's what a parent will call me and say, Dr. Caro, I have noticed 1, 2, 3 about my child, and they're just about to get into teenage. I need to nip that in the bud. So number one, I don't like that word nip in the bud. How do I nip that word? How do I nip it in the bud so before I lose my window of opportunity? So we usually unpack those two things first, because it's never too late. And this is not about nipping, okay? It is about a process. It's about giving of yourself in a relationship, cultivating that healthy relationship, and you will go a long way. And number 3, finally, is self-compassion. We have to cut ourselves slack, okay? We will make mistakes. We will still yell at our children. We will still do all those things because we are human. Please give yourself compassion and give yourself permission to do over, number 1, with yourself, and number 2, to repair with your child, to apologize to them, okay? And be sure that even as you are apologizing, it's not from a place of, you know, if you hadn't. It's from a place of, this is what was going. When you told me that, I just panicked. I just panicked and I reacted out of panic. You're teaching them such good skills also of conflict resolution, because you're teaching them to take responsibility of their inner experiences that cause them to react. So those are my 3-point-something points.
It's nyara nyara. Whoever wants to go up next can go.
Maybe I can go next, because on my screen, to your left, Dr. Carol. My mambo matatu, I think, will be similar, but in not too many words. As parents, we need to take time to know ourselves. There's many tools. You can decide to have a meeting with yourself. You can get feedback from whoever, but get to know your authentic self. Know how you're wired, know what triggers you, know when you thrive, what it is you're doing. Just take time to get to know yourself, and then connect with your child. Connect that person to your child or your children, to your teenagers. So that authenticity of letting them know, this is what was going on, this is who I am, this is why I do X the way I do it. So self-awareness is so critical to how we parent, you know, the outcomes that we will receive are pegged on knowing ourselves. If you don't know yourself, how will your child know who you are? How will they learn to know who they are? So it's so important to know yourself and know how you're wired. Number 2 is, there's no shame in making mistakes. Give yourself grace. Mistakes will happen. You will fall at some point. You will scream, but let's apologize. I love what Dr. Carola said, apologize. The biggest lesson I have learned is watching my teenager come to apologize to me. We'll have an argument, or I'll have shouted, or we'll have, a conversation will have escalated because you're trying to teach them something or to say something. And I will not drag the conversation at length and get it to be so wild or whatever. But over time, what has happened is a day later, some hours later, he will come back and he'll say, I'm sorry, it shouldn't have gotten to that far. I understand what you're saying, or I don't understand what you meant when. So you will end up having a peaceful conversation at that point because he's gone or she's gone and reflected about what has happened. So let's learn to apologize to our parents or to our children authentically, to show vulnerability to our kids, because we're people as much as they are people and growing into adults. And then number 3, I would say, be intentional about parenting. We're always told, oh, there's never a solution. Oh, there's this and this and this and this. Be intentional. If you need the village, which we all do, then reach out. No shame in reaching out. But be intentional about how you parent, about how you communicate to your child, about everything to do with your child. Be intentional. It's a choice. And if we are intentional and do things on purpose, not because days are happening and life is moving, but because we are choosing to be intentional about the kind of parent you want to be, about the kind of child you want to raise, the kind of experience you want to bring to your child, let's be intentional. It always pays off, and it's always a positive effect when you connect with your child and you begin to have a good relationship with your child. Who can I pass it on to?
I'll go. So for me, what I would say, always go with be, do, have. What kind of teenager do you want to have in, not as a teenager, but as an adult? So treat them as the adult you want them to be. Be curious, always be curious. Study them, study your children to get to know them. That's number 1. Number 2, be relatable. Don't come to them as this high and mighty who cannot make a mistake, because that leads them to not knowing you. So be relatable, get into their world and really know them. If it's a dance that you see, if they love to dance, learn the dance with them. If they like to play this video game, play with them just to get into their world, right? Number 3, whatever you need, when your teenager comes to you and is talking to you, first ask yourself, at this moment, do they need, and you can ask them, do you want me to answer you? Are you looking for a solution, or are you just talking? Do you want a listening ear? Because sometimes we, especially as moms, we always want to solve problems for our children. And sometimes that's not what they need. They just had a hard day at school and they need somebody to talk to. All right? And the last one, I don't know how number is that, is allow room for argument. Because if they cannot learn arguing with you respectfully, right? I don't think it will go well when they start learning outside. Asiyefunzwa na mamake hufunzwa na ulimwengu. We know that saying, right? So let them be open for them to come and have that conversation with you, because like I always say, and I've said it here again, the home is the first community. Those are my 3 or 4 points.
Shalom.
The challenge about having such conversations and you telling us mambo matatu, those are too many things. So I have 9 of my points that have been taken to a great extent. But anywho.
Okay.
As Florence was talking about video games, I was just looking and saying, okay, tick, tick, tick. Anyway, thank you, Posa, for hosting us. I mean, this has been lovely. I've enjoyed the conversations. Nice meeting you, Syria, and listening to the people who have contributed. My mambo matatu would be, first and foremost, to establish trust. We're talking about communicating with adolescents. I think communication lines stay open when you trust the person on the other end. So things will happen. Life will happen. But if there is trust, then the communication line can stay open. Trust also allows us to make mistakes. Trust will allow you to allow your team to make mistakes. So trust them, trust them and trust yourself. You're on a journey, really somewhere. Then the second one is to leverage the gift of time. Remember when I was talking about the timeline? Leverage the gift of time. Not everything will happen overnight, and understand that even God does not expect you to do everything overnight. So your teenager won't stay a teen forever. Neither will you stay the parent of a teen forever. So the idea is to look at life, this communication thing, if we crack it, how is it going to be when we grow up? When we are all much older. So healing communication is not going to be an overnight affair. Then the third one I would say is focus on your team. I think it was Florence who was saying, vet your people properly. Focus on your team. There's something I have that I call it the eggs village, because it was a success formula that I bumped into when parenting my own teens. And I saw that a lot of the time when you talk about taking a village to raise a child, we assume that all you need are the adults raising your teenager, right? When we talk about having a village, for me, I felt it wasn't just about the adults. If your teenager has somebody younger than them who's looking up to them, then they will be motivated and inspired to set an example. So we are not trying to communicate to our teens and then they end up dead with that information. If you can actually watch your teen communicate to a younger child, you will see whether the lesson is hitting home. So when we say it takes a village and it takes a team for the teen to actually work, have different aspects of people in that village. Have a younger person who's looking up to them, somebody that they can be responsible for. Have a person who's still younger than them, but who gives them significance. A 10-year-old is going to look at your 15-year-old as though they're a superhero, right? So have that 10-year-old around them who's looking up to them, who they're being a role model to. Have somebody who's at least 10 years older than them. The 24-year-old is much cooler than you will ever be, no matter how hard you try. So have other young people. And what this sort of village does, it also gives you somebody to mentor. So it becomes something that's going to flow over generations. The same way we are saying there's intergenerational trauma, we can have this intergenerational village that basically has people around this teenager of yours, and then have older people. Let's not stop the mentorship or the village from just ourselves. We have people who brought us up. My father is much cooler to my kids than I am because he's old. You know how when a grandmother says certain things, she says it with the wrong accent, she says it in 3 different languages, she says it with a lot of love and then just spoils them. Grandchildren are God's gift to us, or to our grandparents. Grandchildren are actually God's gift to their grandparents for not killing us, the parents, right? So let them have that relationship. Let them be part of the village. So the 3 things: build trust, establish trust and keep it open. Seek first to understand, that was said by Florence. Leverage on the gift of time, and then build a team. Build a different type of team that will actually, help you do this journey. Bless you all. It's been real. Yeah, thank you.
This is where Sarah does homework. Nitajaribu. Okay, just know that the stubbornness that is inbuilt in an adolescent is God-given. Our ancestors needed it so that the adolescent would move out of the home, so that to prevent consanguineous marriages, unions between relatives. And so that stubborn spirit is what has created us today. Adolescents are awesome. And when we raise awesome adolescents, we are gonna raise awesome adults. It's been real. Thank you. The quad, the trio will be back in 3. Shalom. On 18th we'll be back. We are gonna go back to Sunday. Today it's in honor of Florence, whose Sabbath is on Sunday, and we honor that. But we'll be back on the 18th. The topic is on motherhood. Deno, before you beat me, fatherhood will follow that after some 2 weeks after that. Thank you. If you know any topic you want covered, somehow, I'm horrible at advertising us, but somehow just get it to us through our authentic page on Facebook and on YouTube. I think there's one on Instagram, I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm that terrible. But asanteni sana, Mungu awabariki, tutaonana baadaye. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kosa.
Bye. Thank you.